So there is a gentleman named Kerry Winter. And if you remember, Barry Sherman gets into the business with a company called Empire Pharmaceuticals, which was started by Kerry Winter's father. He is the cousin of Barry Sherman. Now, this is interesting. So there's a show in Canada on the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, The Fifth Estate. During that, an angry and bitter cousin of Barry Sherman, this guy Kerry Winter, fails a lie detector test after making unsubstantiated allegations that the former Apotex CEO was part of an aborted plot to kill his wife 2 decades ago. So this is fishy here. So Kerry Winter comes out and says, oh, Barry Sherman wanted me to murder his wife 2 decades ago. He fails that polygraph, that it's not true. Winter and his own siblings have been locked in a protracted decade-long lawsuit that was launched in 2007 seeking some of this Apotex fortune. So their argument is, my father started the original company, which Barry built into this billion-dollar business. I want a piece of it. Now, I saw this guy on TV, Kerry Winter. I think he was a drug addict. People go through things in their life. He admitted to drug addiction. He's suspect in many ways, including possibly a suspect. Karm, you get a point.
Okay. There is a little legal point that I picked up and I like to show off. This Barry Winter's father was the brother of Sherman, of Barry Sherman. Mm-hmm. And he died when his children were relatively young. And he ran a company called Empire. When he died, Sherman took over the company. And legally, he didn't realize that each child was entitled to 20% of the company. Now, years later, the kids come back, who are now adults, and they want their own 5%, 4 times 5 is 20% of the company. But they lose the case. And here is the interesting part. The reason they lose the case is that the money didn't come from
Empire.
The money did
She's
not.
She's 83, everyone. Don't worry. Empire.
I think Imperial sounds better. Empire. The money came from Empire, but immediately afterwards, Barry Sherman sold that company and proved to the courts that the money came from the new company and not from their company. So that's an interesting twist.
It gets even more interesting here, and we'll let John jump in after this. And I feel great because I got through most of my talking points here, so I can finally take a breath.
OCD.
In a wide-ranging interview with the Fifth Estate, that Canadian Broadcasting Corporation show, this Karm, I want your take on this, and please don't grunt into the microphone for the 4 millionth time. This is an audio medium. No one wants to hear an 83-year-old lady grunting into a microphone.
No, it's not true. There are people.
That would be a weird fetish.
Okay, let's go.
Elderly women grunting into mics. It's a whole new weird fetish.
Okay.
In a wide-ranging interview with the Fifth Estate, Winter said he told his psychiatrist, Carmela, your husband is a retired psychiatrist, that in the past he had fantasized about murdering Barry Sherman. This is a direct quote. I would talk about killing Barry, and it was very graphic, Winter said. He would come out of the parking lot of Apotex, and I'd be hiding behind a car, and I just decapitated him. I wanted to roll his head down the parking lot, and I'd sit there and wait for the police. It's a lot of anger, Karm.
Yeah.
I sort of envy the anger.
Kind of angry.
I mean, in all seriousness, Karm, if you were an investigator, is it too obvious, or do you think this guy could be, a potential suspect? Obviously a potential, but do you think...
They can all be suspects.
But I'm saying, is this fantasy of his enough to push him to the front of the line in your
no,
law enforcement expertise?
I saw this guy.
Yeah.
He's too obvious.
He's too obvious, right? John, what do you think? Do you think that he is too obvious, this guy?
Well, like you said, he has a lot of anger. And one thing he didn't have was an alibi for where he was that night. He definitely has a lot of hatred for Barry. He said he was at a cocaine addiction meeting or something like that. And then later that night, he went home and watched Netflix. I think he told CBC. Now, he actually, like you mentioned, he failed the polygraph test. I don't know if you mentioned that yet, but he took a polygraph test and failed it. And then when they said, "Hey, would you like to take another one on the basis of, can we ask you if you are the killer?" He said no, which is, that does not look good for him.